Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be reviewing Hello Beautiful by Ann Napolitano. This book is supposed to pay homage to Little Women. I don't think that's what she intended to do when she began to write it, but that's what it ended up doing, and the blurb on the inside of the cover acknowledges that that's what it does. Before I began to read Hello Beautiful, I tried to read Little Women first, and I only got through about 2/3 of it because it was really slow, but it was still good. It was just really slow. I finished this though. I finished Hello Beautiful and I enjoyed it quite a bit. This is pretty much the genre that I enjoy to read. It's a family saga, multi-generational, it's literary. It does kind of move slowly. Her writing is amazing though. Her writing is very beautiful. And if you enjoy that kind of slower paced, thoughtful, insightful, sort of following train of thought type of writing, you'll enjoy this quite a lot because you are able to step into the perspectives that she's writing from. So the chapters alternate between William's point of view, Julia's point of view, and Sylvie's point of view. Later on, Alice is introduced and we'll get to who Alice is. But alternating between William's point of view and Julia's point of view, at the very least, I actually really like that idea. So for background information, William is sort of the main character. He's not the only main character, but he is like the opening chapter. The hardship that he goes through at the beginning of his life as a child shapes who he becomes as an adult. The trauma that he experiences ends up influencing the relationship that he ends up having with Julia, who Julia ends up being his first wife. Julia is from a family that is full of sisters. She's one of 4. She's the oldest. And Sylvie is her younger sister, the second oldest in the 4 sisters, who the 4 sisters, they are very close. They are more themselves when they are together than when they are apart. They are very supportive and loving of each other. At least that's what they're supposed to be for each other. I actually did enjoy reading what their relationships were like, and it was very reminiscent to Little Women, where in Little Women, you know, you have the 4 sisters, Jo, Beth, Meg, and Amy, and they're very close. I think in Little Women they're younger because this story, they start off with Julie being in college already. In Little Women, I think it starts off with them being younger, and there are like some differences in like time period. Of course, this is Hello Beautiful is written in like it takes place in like the 1980s into early 2000s, and Little Women is much earlier than that because it's a classic, so it was written a long time ago. Anyway, going back to the storyline. So Julie is William's first wife, but when he sort of breaks, he has like a mental breakdown, his depression comes to the surface. He can't take the pressure of his life, a life that he really, I guess, didn't really want. He just sort of went with the flow, and Julia was she was the sort of like pursuer in the relationship and in taking things to the next step. So when he breaks down and like can't take it anymore, Julia kind of like steps back and is like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. By that time, they already had their daughter, and their daughter was kind of sort of like a trigger for him, actually. So Sylvie is the one who visits him in the hospital, and it's not that I need to retract the fact that I said that I liked the book. I liked the book. I liked her writing. I like this genre. I like the style. Honestly, I enjoyed reading it. But when it comes to like a question of morality, I mean, every story has to have conflict, right? In this one though, I just don't like it. I don't like that Sylvie ended up marrying her sister's first husband, and that basically kind of split up the sisters, which again, every story has to have conflict. But this was like, oh my gosh, like why would you do that? But I guess that made it in a way more enjoyable too, to have like to have characters that have like grayness to them, where like morality is questioned, but yet you still see like the reasoning behind it. I don't agree with the reasoning behind it, but I still think that Anne, the writer, did a good job with executing this project, this novel. And then I mentioned Alice earlier. Alice is the daughter of Julia and William before he had his breakdown. And Julia basically lied to her and said that her father died. And actually, I think Alice being introduced into the story, for me, that really was like the epitome of what made a lot of this entertaining, because I just enjoyed reading from her point of view, from the point of view of someone who, as a reader, we know the truth, but the character doesn't know the truth. And in a very like apparent way. Not only does the reader know the truth, but the characters around her know the truth. So she's living in this lie, and it was interesting to see how she processed things. It was interesting to see, and quite funny to see how, as a child, she really internalized the fact that her father, quote unquote, died in a car accident, which he didn't. But otherwise, I'm trying to think of other things that I can kind of dig into, because there's a lot. It's very, to me, this was very rich, a very rich novel. I definitely had to read this actively, so like taking notes and underlining and scribbling things. Every chapter takes place in like a time frame, so it's like a month and a year time range. So it was helpful for me to write down like major events that happened, so I could understand that, like, okay, this is the overlap of, for example, Julia and William's wedding, but from William's perspective, then from Julia's perspective, then from Sylvie's perspective. But I think that if you're not actively reading it, it can seem like there's too much going on, because you're not being as actively aware of where the pieces fall into place. So some details I really enjoyed actually were Kent and William's friendship. So Kent actually, was a black man. He ended up having dreadlocks, but during that time period, Kent and William met on the job, like in college. William, being white, wasn't even supposed to work where he was working, but Kent like just brought him in and made him a part of, like, sort of, I guess, in a way, he was almost adopted into Kent's life too. Like, Kent was always looking after him, and I think Anne did a good job of subtly making us aware, or putting in like little nuggets of historical context and social context. I do think that the two younger sisters, Cecilene and Emmeline, they were sort of almost tertiary. I still enjoyed them as characters, and I think they were very necessary, but they were more so like supporting characters, and still distinct, but you don't get too much from them. One criticism that I do have is that their father, Charlie, so the book's title is Hello Beautiful, because apparently Charlie would call the daughter, that's how he would address the daughters upon greeting them often. So at the beginning of the novel, Charlie is still alive, and then he dies pretty soon, like first third of the novel, at the birth of the first grandchild, who was born to Cecilene. I can't remember her name, but she was born, I guess, illegitimately. Like, Cecilene wasn't married or anything, which caused also huge problems with their mother, Rose, which I will get to Rose. But their father, Charlie, when he is alive in the text, it seems as if he's kind of sort of cast away, or like always characterized as like, oh, he's just drunk. He's just over there drunk in the corner. And then after he dies, I feel like there's a lot of mention of him, and it's always like, he's still with me. He, I'm doing this to make him proud. I was always his rocket, yada yada. But I don't think there was enough development of Charlie for it to hold as much weight. So for me as a reader, like, it just felt kind of, it felt like kind of a reach. Like, I get it that that's their father, but also, like, I don't know, it's almost like, where did this sentimentality come from in regards to him? And then Rose, who is their mother, married to Charlie. She was disappointed in Charlie, then she was disappointed in Cecilene. And then when Julia got her divorce with William, she was disappointed in Julia. Then she was disappointed in Sylvie when she married William. Like, and then Rose ended up moving away. So Rose just seems to be like pretty much all around just like negative character. And I don't know if I'm not fully like appreciating her for what she might be, or maybe what she's supposed to be, but to me she just felt like really grumpy all the time. And I guess maybe in context though, you could consider that during this time period, depression and symptoms of depression and anxiety and other like mental health illnesses they weren't very like, people weren't really aware of what those struggles looked like, or even that they maybe like what they were, what could have caused them. So I actually think it's possible that Rose could have been depressed too. I think William's depression expressed itself in attempting suicide. Oh, well, there's a spoiler. But I do think that Rose could have been experiencing her own form of depression that just kind of went overlooked, because during that time it wasn't as well known, it wasn't as paid attention to, I guess. Some more general things I would say is that, there's quite a bit of cognitive dissonance in the characters, which I actually really enjoy reading. I like to see, I mean, it can be frustrating, but I like to see that. I think, so for example, in William's character, he leaves his family with the intention of protecting his daughter, but ultimately a father leaving his family is not, at least not at the emotional level, which this book it covers a lot more so emotionally, because there isn't as much physical danger, if you will. It's more so emotional, psychological, familial, relational, that type of thing. But anyway, William leaves his family to try to protect both Julia and his daughter, Alice, but ultimately that doesn't really protect them, because they need their father. And it actually is ironic, because William's problems come from his parents sort of neglecting him, actually. I guess not leaving him in the same way that he leaves them, but certainly neglecting him. And then you see in Julia, her cognitive dissonance in trying to be Alice's only family. They move away to a different city and she's trying to be Alice's only family, but you're also working so much that sometimes she doesn't see you, at least eventually when she gets older. Kind of going back to the beginning, and I know I keep going in circles, but I don't know, it's just kind of fun to like discuss this and whatnot. Some of the references to Little Women come up in the sisters trying to identify with each of the sisters in Little Women. They're trying to decide like who is who. I found that to be interesting, and honestly, before they even got to that part where they started to do that amongst themselves, I was already trying to connect the dots of like who is who, and I think, and eventually Anne, the narrator, does say that like they all kind of have a little bit of each of the sisters in them, which is what I ended up finding, because I couldn't really pinpoint who was who. Another thing is William, he gets welcomed into the family and becomes a friend of all of them, a family that is basically almost all girls. Because in Little Women, Mr. March is gone for a while too, but I guess for different reasons. I think in Little Women, it starts off with the father not being there, and then he comes back from war. In Hello Beautiful, it starts off with the father being there, and then he passes away. So that's interesting. And then Mrs. March is sort of kind of completely flipped, where in Little Women, Mrs. March is very sweet, very kind. You can find absolutely no fault in her. Whereas in Hello Beautiful, she's the total opposite. Rose is very hard to like, and if you hear anyone else really talk about it, she's just hard to like. I don't think Anne really gives us much to really grasp as far as like likability in Rose. So I mentioned, you know, Kent and William's friendship, but then there's also Sakura, who was working also in that same setting, who was a black woman. She's not given a lot of screen time, but eventually William does reconnect with her and get to know her better and get to hear about her family some. And at that time, he's moved on and working, you know, in, I think in the same like city, same school, but more as like a assistant coach or something, and she's still working in the same place as far as I can remember. So that's interesting, and it does give you a little bit of social insight. There's a mention of AIDS indirectly. There's a mention of the 2007-2008 recession indirectly, and I like how it's done. Again, this is a literary novel. It's not commercial. It's, everything is artsy. Everything is done with metaphors and similes, and there's a lot of exposition, a lot of narrative, like prose. So in between like an action or a statement, you have memories and observations and hopes and background, and dreams and feelings and description. And I think you have to like that to like this. You have to be able to like sit still and wait for, I guess, like the climax and the meat and bones. But I actually do enjoy the slowness. I enjoy the building up to it. I think all those details were relevant and important. And I think I could read a story maybe that was just the ordinary lives of people, just living their lives, being themselves in whatever time periods. I think it's interesting. I think it's cool. I'm not sure that I have anything else to say, and I think I let out a lot of spoilers anyways. I hope you guys enjoyed this review slash mini analysis. I love doing these book discussions with you guys. I thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and come around for next time.